Please be seated. So we are hearing this morning the Beatitudes, those beautiful words that Jesus says to a crowd of people before him. And so I wanted to find out, when did Jesus say this, and to who did he say this to? And it turns out that in the Gospel of Luke, the Beatitudes are spoken to this group of people right after he has selected his apostles. So he has been out there healing, talking to people, sharing the good news about God's love to them. And he's doing all this. And right before this happens, he sees disciples. He calls them to him. He looks at them and he says, I'm going to, Simon, who's also Peter, Andrew, James, and he starts calling them, Mattheus, Bartholomew, and he says to them, you will be my apostles, right? You will be my apostles. And then after this, he starts talking about the Beatitudes. And so just imagine Jesus, he's on a kind of a hill, and he sees before him a group of people. And what does he see? Who does Jesus see among those people? He sees the poor. He sees the hungry. He sees the displaced. He sees the sick. Because remember, the people who have been following him and asking and talking to him and being really moved and excited by him, they are the people who were hungry. They are the people who were sick and displaced and who were left to the sides. And he has been preaching and teaching to them and healing them and feeding them and caring for them. So he's looking out, and basically what he's saying is, I see you. I see you. I see you. And I love you, and I am here to tell you some very, very good news. So that is what is before him, is a group of people who have been left behind, who have been pushed aside, who have been forgotten and not seen as God's people. That is who he's telling about the Beatitudes, about how they are the blessed ones, how God is on their side. And basically, Jesus stands before them, probably is sitting down, but basically is in front of them and says, I am on your side. You are my people, right? And to you, good news will be brought. But he also sees, and he says, and then he ends with, and blessed are you who will be reviled, excluded, hated, because it basically saying it can get worse. It may get worse for you if you stand with me. If you start walking with me and paying attention to the lessons that I'm teaching, it may get worse for you, because the people who are in power do not want this. So he's also warning them, giving them a little heads up, because remember, he's just called his apostles to be with him. And so he's basically letting them know it may be difficult. It may be harder. And yet, you are the blessed ones, because it is those of you who are willing to walk with me and to pay attention once again to what God taught us, that we will be the ones who will inherit the good news, right? And so he also is saying, now look at you, all of those who are kind of are hanging on to and looking and listening. If you have not paid attention to your brother, to your sister, to your neighbor, and you have not seen their suffering, if you have not cared for them, and you have only cared about yourself, that is not going to end well for you. Not because there's this condemnation, but it's a reminder. You are not acting as God's people. You can't say that you're God's people if you are not behaving and acting and living as God has called you to do. And so Jesus is here to remind them of how it is that we are supposed to live together if we really, really want to be a disciple of Christ. So today you just heard all this beautiful music because today's a special day for us. We are celebrating All Saints' Day. We are observing All Saints' Day today to recall and remind us of those who have gone before, of those who have said, yes, I will follow Jesus. Yes, I will feed the poor. I will visit the sick. I will visit those who are imprisoned. I will take a stand for justice. That is who we're celebrating today. Not only the famous ones, the ones we read about in the newspaper, the ones that are in our books, the ones that books have been written about, but also those we know. Our mothers, our grandmothers, our aunts, our loved ones who have gone before, who have also shared with us and modeled for us what does it mean to follow Jesus. Now, this doesn't mean, because, I have my grandmother and my grandfather have gone before. Was my grandmother perfect? No. But she taught me how to follow Jesus. And so being a saint doesn't mean you've got it all together. It doesn't mean you're not going to get things wrong sometimes. Being a saint means you are willing and working hard to follow Jesus. To follow in Jesus' footsteps and those saints who have gone before, so that we too can walk this walk and that we profess that we are disciples of Christ. And this means that sometimes and often we do not stand and we don't side with the powers that be, with the powers and principalities that tell us differently, that ask for our allegiance at the cost of the poor, at the cost of the immigrant, at the cost of the homeless. Because the princes and principalities don't want us to pay attention to those things. Don't want us to look at people who are suffering and see them as human beings, as seeing them as people of God, created by God with love. We want to just forget them, discard them. It's uncomfortable. They leave messes behind. They smell funny. They take over. They displace, right? And so it means sometimes that we say, no, I am not going to listen to that. I'm going to stand with those that Jesus has claimed are the blessed ones, the poor, the hungry, the displaced. And so those saints who have gone before, we have books of them. They have modeled in their own way. If you look at the stories of all these saints, they're not the same. They don't all do the same things. They don't all focus on the same causes or the same problems of the world. They have a particular gift to pay attention to particular things. But if we are all paying to our call, to what we have been asked to pay attention to, what a world this would be. And that's what Jesus is reminding us in the Beatitudes of how to live, and that's what the saints have taught us is possible. It is possible to live this life as a disciple of Christ. Not easy. We don't do it all the time. We don't always get it right. But it is possible if we are willing to do that and to remember the words of Jesus of who we are to be in allegiance to and who we are to be following. And so as we think about this week, as we go about our day and our week this week, I invite all of us to think about, how are we walking with Jesus? Are we listening to Jesus' call? Are we living the life Jesus is asking us to live? Where could we do something different? Where could we be kinder and more patient? Where could we pay attention to the things we need to be paying attention to and not get distracted by that does not matter? We each have gifts. We each have a call. And so the invitation is, can we live that out fully so that we can be living a more saintly life? Amen.